you tell everyone about grip sport.
Crushing, pinch grip, thick bar, wrists.
If the best guy in the world can't lift 100 pounds on it, I don't give a shit about it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Grip Show. I think I have a pretty highly anticipated guest here with me today. I'm just going to personally lead in by saying that throughout grip sport, arm lifting, whatever, every now and then you have these people that come along that, I don't know, they just like naturally are super strong, or they're just kind of like phenoms out the gate. There's been several instances of that, but my personal opinion, I don't know if there's been anybody that has progressed or kind of came out the gate as quickly as the person I'm about to interview. And just from the level of feats, the competition stuff, definitely just, like I said, a kind of a special guest that I think a lot of people have been wanting to hear from. And a lot of people are looking forward to hearing this one. So Ben Helms, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
Yeah, man, no problem. So real quick, just want to dive in and just kind of cover everything. So you live in Vinton, Virginia, which is like right by Roanoke. Were you also born there?
Yeah, I was born in Salem, actually, but it's
okay, right there. Okay. And just so everybody, this is just like bonus info, I guess, just extra details, but you're currently 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for everybody that's seeing Ben clean things and like cleaning the inch bell or doing these crazy feats or competing, and maybe they think like, oh, this dude's like 35 or something. Ben's still in his 20s. So like, he's only been doing grip about a year, and Ben is still in his late 20s. So we all know that grip can progress very late in life. So if you already see what Ben's probably doing right now before he's even turned 30, you can probably only imagine maybe what the potential feats would look like. I won't go too much. We'll get into your potential feats that you're working on, but yeah, just, I think that might catch some people off guard that you're only 28. So I felt like it was worth mentioning. So real quick, tell me kind of how did you get started with strength training in general? Like, what is your just basic general background?
All right, so I didn't start weight training until I was a freshman in high school. I had a teacher of mine who was my wrestling coach as well, and we had a really good relationship. And he thought I should start weight training. He thought I would do pretty well at it. He thought I had he would say I'd have a good bone structure, putting on muscle. So I took his advice, and the first exercises I started doing were kettlebells and stuff like that, because that's mainly what the type of weightlifting wrestlers were doing, was kettlebells and body weight stuff. But then he got me into the gym, and I started bench pressing, and I fell in love with that. Bench pressing, it kind of just took off. I was one of those typical, high school kids that didn't want to train legs, didn't want to do anything else, and just wanted to get his bench up, right? So
yeah,
started out where 135 was my max, and that felt super hard. My wrestling coach, he's this 5'7", 130-pound guy, benching 2 plates on each side like it's nothing. So I was like, oh shit, this guy, half my size, is twice as strong as me. So it really motivated me to get into weight training. And then eventually that same year, I ended up bench pressing 500 pounds. It went from 135, 500 pounds, and my body weight was still around 170, 180 pounds when I did that. So that's when it's taken off.
That's it's almost unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like when you first hear it, it's like, shit, there's no way. I don't believe that. Like, you know what I mean? That's like the probably a lot of people's initial reaction, but at the same time, it's like, man, those people are out there. You know what I mean? Is it rare? Yeah. But as we've seen through kind of your entry into grip sport, you know what I mean? You went from not knowing what grip sport was, or, you know what I mean? Not competing in anything arm lifting or grip sport. And, you know, everybody in the grip world's, you know, kind of seeing what most guys are lifting, what most new people do. And then it's like, oh, here's this guy that, you know what I mean? You were there the whole time. You just hadn't found out about grip yet. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's kind of hard to believe that somebody could have that kind of like fast progress. But then when you like see it develop live and kind of unfold in person, like in your own sport, then you're also like, oh, okay, yeah, like it's not just a grip thing. Like you were doing it with bench press and other lifts as well, where
Mhm.
you know what I mean? You pretty much took to those things quickly. So maybe there is like a genetic, or, you know what I mean? Maybe there is something there that you're more inclined to be stronger, bigger bone structure, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
I definitely think genetics has a lot to do with it because my dad was always extremely fit and stronger than, your average guy. I was telling you about when he was in the military, all the pull-up records he'd set and all that stuff. He's always been a super strong guy. So I think I got some of his genetics on the strength. So
Yeah.
blessed with that.
Okay. And moving on. So you pretty much, I was the same way. Try to bench press like 3 times a week, max out every time. Like shoulders feel like shit. You know what I mean? Like you're just,
It's a miracle I can scratch my forehead because I maxed all the
yeah. But I think a lot of us lifters, young kids, whatever at the time, you fall victim to that. You know what I mean? And it's real easy to kind of get into. At what point did you start to maybe realize that that wasn't the smartest way, or when did you kind of mature as a lifter and start to get into other lifting or understand like the importance of lower body, full body strength training? If that makes sense.
To be honest, it just socializing with people. The bro atmosphere in the gym. Like when you go to regular commercial gym, they always want to troll small calves or the chicken legs, right? So it wasn't really me learning, what's best for your body or the healthiest.
Yeah.
You gotta be well rounded. It was more of an insecurity. I was like, damn, I don't want to be this, top heavy guy with chicken legs. So I started training legs. And
A yield sign. You don't want to be you don't want to be a yield sign.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I hated training legs. I still hate training legs, but I don't want to be the chicken leg guy. So that's I started doing that. And then I guess that when I got to my senior year of high school was when I really started balancing everything out and really started falling in love with just fitness in general instead of just, well, I want a bench press to have a big bench or, stuff like that. I started targeting other things. And then that's when I decided to make my major in college, kinesiology. So I wanted to study how the body moves and, what's the most beneficial way and most effective way to target certain muscle groups and, what angles, like in a bench press. That I didn't know this in high school until college, bending the bar. So when you have tricep activation, if you try and bend the bar, your elbows come inwards. So you're activating more muscle groups. Stuff like that just really got me excited. So that's when I majored in that. And that's when all my numbers started shooting up. And in college, my junior year of college was when I think I got my first 6-plate deadlift. And then from on, it just, everything else, I started analyzing everything. And that's when my numbers started coming up and it translated well into grip.
Okay. And now you're saying you went to college, studying kinesiology and everything like that. When you were exiting high school and kind of venturing into college, what was your body weight around that time?
So I actually took a break right after I graduated. I went through some phase of, being a vegetarian and
Really
stopped weightlifting altogether for a little bit. I had this love for backpacking and being out in nature, and I did a lot of that stuff. And didn't touch any weights till, I don't know, probably the second semester of my freshman year of college. But when I started weightlifting again, I was probably 180, 185 pounds.
Okay.
And by the time I was done with college, I was almost 300 pounds. And that's when I got my home gym here. I bought a house here in Benton and just dumped in a ton of money to get a, decked out home gym. And that's when I ended up topping out around 308 pounds. And that's when all my numbers were really starting to shoot up there. So I put on a massive amount of weight in a short period of time with that.
Okay. What would you say was probably the biggest contributing factor to you kind of packing on that amount of weight? I know you mentioned
factor.
Yeah, basically adding that 120 pounds and being about 300 pounds from being, your typical 180 pound frame or whatever you entered with. I know you kind of credited like finding out about like stand efforting and like power building and stuff like that. And that probably contributed, but is it like, what else contributed to you basically going from like being 180, 190 pounds and then like next thing you know, you're 300?
Well, the biggest thing was SARMs,
Okay.
Yeah. I love talking about those. I love to put this on the podcast if you're cool with that.
No, 100%. Yeah, I think that any form of truth, honesty, or like transparency, I think just being more like raw and unfiltered is better. I just think that too many people steer away from stuff. So for sure. Yeah. Say whatever you want to say, man.
So when I really wanted to start packing on weight, of course, you're eating more, you're training heavy. I started taking SARMs, and SARMs are selective androgen receptor modulators. So the stuff that I was taking it was called MK677, and it was a butamorin. What it did was it would stimulate your pituitary gland to secrete more growth hormone. So when I started taking that, it really made my appetite increase, and I was eating all the time. And it made my sleep super, super deep. So I was getting really good sleep, which is the most important part for, gaining muscle, getting stronger. And that on top of that with eating and all that, it just, it made my recovery time cutting like twice as fast. So I did those SARMs for maybe 2 or 3 semesters when I was in college. And then after that, I stopped taking them. I didn't feel like I needed it anymore. I reached a body weight that I wanted to go to. And then I just continued training in there. And that's when when you mentioned Stan Efferding, he was doing bodybuilding and powerlifting, and he mixed it together to form power building.
Okay.
That's when I got into power building, mixing accessory lifts into powerlifting exercises. So I really valued cable machines to, finish off my workouts when I was doing bench, deadlift, or squat. And it was a pretty good combo for putting on muscle and adding strength at the same time. So that's what I did mostly. Pretty much my entire time weight training was that. And then it eventually turned into strongman training when I had the home gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so pretty much with that era of you adding weight, you pretty much had like almost like overeating or like extreme appetite combined with the perfect like deep sleep, but also mixed with the like thirst for knowledge, the kinesiology, movement, body, basically studying everything you possibly could and then putting the work on top of it. And that all kind of made a perfect, I guess, like the stars all aligned. And then that's where your biggest body weight and a lot of your biggest lifts came from.
Yeah.
Okay. So since we're kind of at that point, just want to mention a few of your lifts, just for people listening in or watching, whatever the case. So 595 bench. Do you remember about what body weight you were when you did that?
So I was about 280, 285 when I did that, but
And this is raw, completely raw, right?
Yeah, and it was on an axle. I didn't use a barbell, it was on an axle bar.
Okay, so a lot of pressing with axle.
Yeah.
So 595 bench on an axle bar.
And all these lifts too are, garage gym lifts. It's
Yeah,
not
I
different stuff. So
yeah,
that,
yeah. Like when I'm listing Ben's biggest lifts here during this era, this isn't like it was in a competition somewhere or sanctioned. These are just his lifetime PRs in general. These are training lifts. So a 595 bench, an 820-pound deadlift, 675 squat. So pretty, to me at least, I'd say to most people, pretty insane numbers. Now, obviously, maybe if you get into like the elite of the elite in powerlifting, it might be like, oh yeah, those numbers are kind of normal, but pretty much to nobody else are those numbers really normal numbers. You know what I mean? It's a pretty pretty serious amount. Now, out of those three lifts, your 595 bench, 820 deadlift, and a 675 squat, which one do you probably value the most, or which one did you enjoy the most?
Well, I'd probably just stick with bench because that's how it all started. I'm most proud of the bench, but the deadlift too. I don't know. It's pretty close. I'm not going to say squat at all because I hate doing legs, but
Yeah.
the squat just came around because I thought, if I'm going to be strong up top, I got to get the legs strong too. That 675 squat or 765 squat was probably the most uncomfortable, brutal thing I've done ever in any workout. I've hated training legs, and the way I would train to get a heavy squat was 20 rep sets. So that's like doing 40-yard dashes over and over and over again. The amount of endurance you need to do 20 rep sets sucked. Like I'd be drenched in sweat every time. So I think the one I value the most is bench, but the one I'd be most proud of is the squat, even though it's my least favorite.
Yeah, just because of probably, like you said, being the least favorite and being the one that you probably had to, you're probably the least motivated to do it. And it probably, it's, harder. It's harder to push yourself at something like that. I'm kind of very similar. I fucking hate squatting. I don't know why, you know what I mean? I naturally kind of gravitated towards bench and dead early on. So I didn't really, mind, hey, my form was terrible and I got some injuries because of it early on, just being a dumbass kid lifting, with poor form. But I never had an issue pulling like a deadlift or bench press, but squatting just always felt like almost the most unnatural, most annoying. Like I don't want to be that guy that's like complaining like, oh, my body leverages are just not meant for squatting, or it's just terrible. But I never felt powerful in the squat position. I never felt like I could find a good position. And I'm sure there is one, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't be that person that's just like, there's just no way I can squat. Like, no, there's a way if you want to spend enough time and figure it out. But I'm just saying, as far as everything else, deadlift and bench came pretty natural, but I kind of share your same hate for squat, or I can kind of relate to it. It's
For a lot of people.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, man. I never felt right to me. It still most days does not feel right to me. And I still don't squat very often. So I might mix it in as like an accessory maybe and do a different variation of squatting, but to just put a straight bar on my back and barbell squat these days, God, hardly ever.
I haven't done a barbell squat in over a year now.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't do it anymore. It ain't worth it to me. I don't like it.
Yeah. So leading in from, I guess we're going to kind of fast forward just a little bit from packing on the weight, hitting these big lifts in college. You kind of transition into more strongman style training once you get your own home gym, your own setup, which is Peak Street Barbell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how'd you come up with that name?
So that is the name of the street that I live on. And I wanted initially to train some people in this gym. I did that for a very short period of time. And I ended up, getting a job as a beer man. And the hours were just so inconsistent or way too long that I just didn't have time for it anymore. So I just kept calling it Peachtree Barbell. That's my home gym. That's the name of the street I live on, and that's where it came from.
Okay. So you got Peak Street barbell rolling, you're training a few people here and there, but you're lifting, you're doing more strongman stuff.
Mhm.
There might be a couple years here that we're maybe kind of glancing over. But now we're going to start to kind of drift towards how you found out about grip. What kind of led to this, super strong powerlifting lifts, big strongman lifts. But now how does that, like, what's your intro into grip exactly?
So eventually, this was when I did the weight loss journey. I wanted to cut weight, get really cut up, and so I didn't have a passion for super heavy lifting anymore. I was more focused on just physique, and I wanted to sell a bunch of the stuff I wasn't using anymore. That's my biggest issue I've always had, is buy, sell, trade with gym equipment. But started selling all my stuff, and Dylan Holmat was the guy that introduced me into grip. So he wanted to buy a circus dumbbell that I was selling, and he started talking to me about grip comps. I don't know how the topic of grip came up, but he said, "Oh, have you ever heard of Arm Lifting USA? You should, get into this and compete. I think you do well." I was like, "Oh, why not? I'll give it a try. It sounds fun." And that's when I got hooked, and never turned back. It was super fun. It's where I met you, and
Yeah, that's where we first met. Yeah.
you introduced me to blobs and inch bells, and it's just been taking off ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the inch bells and blobs. And then it's like, now you kind of ended up like me, where like, we haven't necessarily been doing grip a really long time, but the obsession and the collection we have makes it look like a 20-year, like it looks like we've been doing grip for 20 years, because like we have so much stuff, but it's because we just like got obsessed with like the inch bells, blobs, and just hunting them down. And it's
Your statement, man. It's
so I remember the competition because it was a super series event.
Mhm.
And I remember you had briefly reached out to me and messaged me. So this would have been like an Instagram thing maybe.
Mhm.
And we had slightly talked, and like I said, I just see some stranger messaging me, I don't know who you are. I have no idea that you're going to be good at grip or even interested in it. Some dude's just asking me about a grip competition, so we ended up kind of meeting there. And that was when I first realized that, like, watching you lift with basically no training and not even really knowing the rule set or knowing what the implements even were. And I'm like, at the time, I felt like I was pretty strong. I'm obviously stronger now, but then, I mean, I felt like, oh yeah, I've been kind of hammering at this for a year or so. I've pulled some okay lifts. And to where, like, if you go to like your local comp, I'm mostly going to be one of the stronger people at a local comp, even with just that year of training. And I remember seeing you there lifting for the first time. And I was kind of like, man, I'm not going to try to like brag on myself and say I got a good eye for talent, or, you know what I mean? But when you spent like 80% of your life in the gym playing sports, you can kind of see when someone's athletic. You can see when someone's strong. You can just see the way they move, they carry themselves. You know what I mean? So I've been in athletics and sports my entire life. So I just remember watching you, and I remember thinking like, goddamn, like this is this dude's first time even like touching this stuff. And like, you were like probably murdering me by like 10 or 20 pounds on every handle, every lift. And I'm like, this dude ain't even like started yet. You know what I mean? Like that's like the baseline. So I could tell right away that you had huge potential. And yeah, I had brought the inch dumbbell there, Thomas inch dumbbell. I had brought it just for people to try. It's a grip thing. And I remember seeing you pick that up the first time you tried it. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, and it haunts me that I didn't get it on film, because I wanted to be able to share that. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I lifted it the first try, but then once the phone was whipped out, it was glued to the floor. Couldn't move it. So
yeah. So like, if it isn't filmed, it didn't happen, right? No,
exactly.
but yeah. So you flung it up, and actually, I remember you making the statement after lifting it. You were like, "I'm going to try to clean this thing." And you said that like almost like right after you took your couple attempts, like it flew up the first time and you're like, I'm going to try to clean it. So I just find it funny that, and we'll catch up to where we're at now. I don't want to fast forward too much, but it's funny to me that the first time you touched it, lifted it, within like 5 minutes, you were already thinking clean and talking about clean. What kind of sparked that? Or what, I mean, because did you even know that cleaning the inch dumbbell was a thing? Were you aware of that? Or was that just something like inside you, like an instinct where you're like, I lifted it, I'm just going to clean it now?
I've known about Thomas Inch and then Mark Henry when he did his stuff.
Okay.
But I had no idea that inch bells were made for people, to have. I thought it was just like that inch dumbbell that Mark Henry used was the inch dumbbell. That's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I saw that you had one, I was like, whoa, these things are, they're made for people. I could get a hold of one of these. And that excited me. And I was like, well, if I can pick it up like this first try, I think if I study it enough, I'll be able to clean it eventually. And yeah.
And you've done that probably more than anybody at this point.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't want to jump too far ahead on the inch clean, but we're going to definitely attack that, because that's something that I think a lot of people have been kind of buzzing about. Is man, it's just not every day you see somebody clean the inch dumbbell, and you definitely don't see them hitting it for volume and making it a repetitive thing, which you have done. So we'll get into that. So that was kind of like your first competition. Now you get your hands on the inch bell, you do this competition. There's a stage 2 to that event where we have to lift again. So we probably didn't talk as much that first event. We probably talked a little bit more the second event. First time's kind of like icebreaker, you're getting to know somebody. Second event, we're chatting up a little bit more. And this time, instead of me bringing the inch bell for people to try, I brought blobs.
Yeah.
So can you kind of run me through what was going through your mind with the blobs, as a feat of strength to try when I brought those there?
So you actually gave me the rundown with all the history of the blobs and, how challenging they are. And, you let me try them out. And I think it was the first one I lifted was the 90.
Next half 90.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, that didn't seem too bad. And then you started telling me about all the tricks that people do with them, like curls and cleans and all that stuff. And once I was able to pick up, I don't know what was the 90 the heaviest one I lifted, or was
you lifted the half 100 next gen. So you lifted the 50-pound blob your first time, but it was the fat man blob that stumped you. You would get it like 80% of the way up and just couldn't lock it out. Mm-hmm. So like that fat man blob kind of haunted you for a bit because you just couldn't land it. But this also, I have to throw this in here for people. I had brought these blobs here just for people to try, like after the event on the side. Oh, Ben gets so hooked on lifting this fat man blob that he's trying to lift it mid competition.
Yeah. And it screwed me on the hub.
Yeah. So there was a hub lifting event. And Ben is over here in between warmups trying to do feats or lifting the fat man blob. It's the first time he's ever touched one. He keeps pulling it like 70-80% lockout, can't finish the deal, and then he's having to jump in and try to hit his actual like competition lifts on the hub. And the dude was lifting like, you were probably lifting like 80+ pounds on the hub, right, in training.
Yeah.
And then
back to the pool above 80 pounds that day.
Yeah. So he's over here going like ape shit on these blobs, trying to get this fat man blob to land and just get that feat done. And I don't remember what the weight is. We could probably go and look it up.
It was 65 pounds, I'm pretty sure.
65. So
and
somebody it was 65 pounds, and basically Ben fried himself out trying to lift blobs mid competition. And I don't want to say you bombed because you got a number on the board, but you lifted a lot less than you thought because you were over here getting obsessed with these blobs that had actually like knocked about 15 or 20 pounds off of your hub lift. So
I think it primed me up though for the Saxon, to be honest. Because that was when, once I lifted the next day, I was like, I'm gonna try and curl this thing. And that's when I got the successful curl, and I was like, damn, that was cool. And you got me all hooked on the blobs, and that's when they started the last. I think Saxon was the very last event, right?
It might have been, man. I honestly don't remember.
I feel like pinching those blobs warmed up my hands for the Saxon. So I ended up pulling a decent number on that Saxon too. That was only what, 2 months of training ever on the Saxon bar.
Yeah, you probably had only touched a Saxon bar once or twice, and I think you pulled close to 250 that day. I believe.
I failed I tried the 250 and I failed it. I think I got 240, 241 or something like that.
Okay, so still, I mean, essentially, your first time doing a 3-inch Saxon lift, I should mention, 3-inch Saxon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to be pulled, oh, you like curled a 50-pound blob, you're doing these feats on the side. It affected you on the hub, but yeah, you, with minimal training, you pulled 240s on a 3-inch Saxon, which is pretty nuts. I mean, that's a pretty good lift. So right there, like I said, that's when I kind of realized, like, you see those first 2 competitions you did, and I'm like, yeah, like, this is just the beginning, man. Imagine if we, like, in my head, I'm like, dude, like, I gotta kind of like spend more time talking to this guy and getting him to kind of, get into this sport, because it's like, it'd almost be a crime if you didn't, you know what I mean? So I was just like, yeah, like this, he just lift the inch the first time. He does a 50-pound blob curl. He's lifting the fat man. I'm like, and that's just the beginning. I'm like, there's no way this dude can just like do like 1 or 2 arm lifting events and then just like go back to his garage and not touch any of this stuff. It's like, I gotta like, not like bribe you or get you into it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I just wanted to get you in the sport, because it's like, man, there's potential.
Yeah, it's, me wanting to do feats pre-comp is still an issue. Like when we did skillet hand, it was either skillet hands or King Kong. I was lifting your 191 haul inch, and then at nationals before that, I was trying to pick up the Arm Assassin 207 inch bell. So it's a constant issue. I just love grip so much that kind of gets in the way of my judgment sometimes. So
yeah. So maybe if anybody's wanting to compete against Ben in competition, maybe just bring a bunch of challenge items to him first and just tell him he can't do it, and just get him like burnout on challenge items. That way, maybe you got a chance to beat him in comp.
There you go. Yeah.
Is that the secret to beating you in competition? Just like lure him in with all these challenge items?
It's very likely I'd probably end up touching them before the comp. So,
but no. So like I said, man, I was just really impressed early on with the feats and stuff. Now, do you still have a preference? Or do you like competitions more, or do you like kind of your own personal feats and like your own personal challenges? Like you said, it's hard for you to keep your hands off that stuff when a competition's around, even. Yeah. So with that being such an issue, or being a tough thing for you to do you like, you know what I mean? Which way do you prefer? Because there's like competitions, and then there's kind of like underground feats of strength, or you know what I mean? Like doing the inch bells, the blobs, the plate pinching, and other things like that. Where do you find yourself pulled more to, would you say?
After I answer this question, Zach, I need to, for some reason, my phone isn't charging. So I just want to make sure this thing doesn't die.
Okay. Yeah. No, man, like whatever, like I said, whatever you got to do, there's no pressure.
Yeah. So I prefer feats over comps. I've never been very competitive. I feel like grips got me out of that, or got me into a comfort zone for competitions. But feats all day. I love feats, man. There's always a new challenge to do. You're in your own zone. I find that, doing different feats, there's always a different, I don't know, it's different for everybody. There's a different hand position, a different comfort spot on your hand on the same implement. So like a blob, I grab my blobs a certain way. I have a ritual I do, dragging my hand up the side of it. And then some people do the exact opposite. They just place a thumb first and You know what I mean? It's just so different, and there's so many different feats out there to accomplish. I don't know. They're more attractive to me than competing. I love competing. I love the environment. It's a good community. I like meeting new people and trying to, outlift top lifters. But for me personally, I enjoy feats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you good with your phone setup and everything, or do
Yeah.
you want to?
Yeah, give me like 2 minutes. I don't want my phone to cut off. I'll be right back.
No, you're good, man. Yeah, take your time. So, everybody, real quick, while Ben kind of adjusts things on his end, just going to say that another thing I definitely noticed about Ben in competition was how humble he was and how open he was to receiving advice. Some people are kind of closed off. They think they know it all. You're talking about a guy who had the kind of lifts that, the 800 plus deadlifts, the 500 plus bench, almost 600 pound bench, whatever, coming into this new sport. And while he's coming into this new sport, he could very easily just walk into that room and be like, yeah, dude, whatever. I know it all. I'm stronger than everybody, blah, blah, blah. He could almost downplay the sport and act like it's, not a big deal. But that wasn't how Ben was. Ben was very humble in his performance. He was very open for advice. And I think that's part of the reason he's still been so successful, is because even though he's at a level where he's pulling off insane grip feats and doing all this crazy stuff that you guys see, he still almost has like that day one beginner mindset and a humbleness that allows him to learn from anybody. I know you just kind of came in halfway through what I'm saying, but I was basically just giving the rundown that although you already came in with all this strength background, kinesiology, you come into this, grip competition, you didn't come in and act like you already knew everything or you're stronger than most people, you're better than people. You came in with a very humble mindset and was very open. You were very open to taking advice. And I was just explaining that I think that's part of the reason that we see your success or your continued success with these feats and how you continue to keep rising up, is because you're not that guy that acts like you know it all. You don't think that you know everything about lifting a blob, or just because you've cleaned the inch bell, you're still, even after cleaning the Thomas inch dumbbell, you're still analyzing how to do it better. You know what I mean? You're still analyzing that movement and carrying that same stuff we talked about from analyzing the earlier lifts. You just applied that to grip. So do you have any comment on maybe your attitude of being open to advice, learning from anybody, and just kind of staying humble, and how that's helped you?
Well, I always love learning new things, and I don't know everything. So even if, just because I clean an inch dumbbell doesn't mean I'm some great, like the best grip athlete or anything like that by any means. I mean, I still have a lot of learning to do. There's still a lot of stuff I don't know about. I mean, for nationals, up to, that day of competing, I still didn't understand how the comp was going to go. Because my first comp I ever did was last man standing. I've never done attempts and all that stuff. So when I did nationals, I was going in like, oh shoot, how am I going to approach this? What am I doing? What numbers am I going to pick? I was asking everyone for advice. There's always some information from anyone that you could. So just because, someone can't clean an inch doesn't mean that they know more about technique and more information about the inch dumbbell than I do. So, yeah, I'm always getting feedback from people, always trying to learn, always trying to grow. It's not necessarily me trying to be humble. I can be pretty cocky, but I'm just saying that me wanting to always learn kind of gives off that humble vibe, I guess,
Okay. So I was giving you too much credit?
Yeah, you were.
Okay. So we talked about your introduction to blobs and bells. We talked a little bit about your analysis of kind of movement and maybe how you've translated that to grip. Did you want to touch on that at all? Just explaining maybe how you applied like the analysis of your movement positioning and how you maximize that with some of the feats you've pulled off.
Yeah. So I can talk about the ritual thing I do with the blob and how I end up cleaning the inch. But
Okay.
when I was talking to you about bending the bar, bench press, angles, getting your elbows turned in, stuff like that. When I got my degree at Reno College, that really helped a lot. So I'm always trying to find different angles, different comfort, best, I don't know, with the best way you can move an object and keep your body in the plane of motion you want to be in. So, like for the blob, there's a lot of friction involved with that. So what I try to do is skin stretching is really important. So if this is the blob, I like to catch all these calluses on my palm with the edge of that blob. So every time you see me lift a blob, I slide my hand down it and then pull it up like this so that my knuckles hook on to that edge. Then I put my fingers in, stretch the skin of my thumb. When it feels comfortable, then I lift it. Same thing for the inch dumbbell. I'm always stretching the webbing on my thumb. The more stretching you get, the more surface area that covers the implement, the more friction. So I've always been looking at, you know, that type of stuff. Like for the inch bell, and I posted, it's in my highlights on my Instagram page, different steps for, you know, setting up the clean for the inch dumbbell, like getting your feet, like having the bell mid-foot, dragging it to you to lock in more pinky pressure, because it's predominantly, you know, a friction lift mostly for the initial part, but then the rest is body dominant. But once you get the bell off the ground and you have your pinky locked in with all that pressure, I'm just making this real short too. I could go in.
Yeah, we could do a 3-hour. We could probably do a full DVD on you cleaning the inch or something. I totally get that. So
once you have it pulled to you, you lift up the bell to make it a V bar. So you're no longer thinking of a rolling handle type thing. You're not pulling thick bar anymore. You're pulling a V bar. So you got to look at so many different ways the inch bell transforms when you're doing a clean. So I just try and get as analytical as I can with it.
Well, it definitely has paid off. Just for like a bonus question, if you don't know, that's fine. But what are the most reps you've landed an inch bell clean in training? Do you know that number?
I think the most I've done is 27.
27 inch bell cleans in one session.
Yeah.
Okay. Just had to ask because I was kind of curious. I know there's been times where you've done double digits. I mean, almost every time when you were training the cleans. I just didn't know what that top number was.
I think out of all of my inch clean sessions I've done, only 2 or 3 of them have been sub double digits. Okay. So yeah, I know that I've cleaned the inch bell over 200 times now. So it's up there.
Okay. So Ben, I would like to add, Ben has cleaned the inch dumbbell not only over 200 times, but a lot of these dumbbells, because they're inch dumbbell replicas, like Ben stated earlier, there's the original Thomas inch dumbbell, which essentially nobody gets hands on. And then we have all these other inch replicas. Well, being replicas, a lot of times the replicas end up harder to lift than the original inch bell itself because they're heavier. The casting process is, it's a little different. So you end up with heavier bells. So I'd like to add in there that you have over 200 plus inch dumbbell cleans to your name. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these bells are higher than the regular 78 kilo or 172 pound Thomas inch dumbbell. Every bell you've done the cleans with has been above that limit. So, and
your 172 Slater is the only one that I've done. Well, and the one at Nationals, I forgot about that. Was the easiest one of all. I mean, that one launched up, but that was what, 169, 168.
Yeah,
that was super light. But
and then I had you here at my home gym, and you cleaned my 180 pound Thomas inch dumbbell. Mm-hmm. So I mean that flew up, and so like I said, just to add some credit to that, you've done you said 27 inch cleans in one session. And like I said, over 200 inch cleans total to your name. And most of those bells being higher or a more difficult feat than the original inch bell itself. So just trying to put that in perspective and just let people understand, kind of what they're looking at. I spoke in an earlier episode of the show with Joe Hodgson, who's lifted some real big bells. And we kind of thought that, for the magnitude of what you've done with the inch bell and your clean and the analysis and the amount and how you've made it just repetitive, and the how heavy of inch bells you've cleaned, we thought that it kind of just got overlooked a little bit. Like I said, the top end guys, or the people we would consider more household names in grip, or the more well-known, well-established competitors, or people that have been in that lane, they would give praise, and they understand the magnitude of that feat. But I think a lot of the newer lifters or people newer to grip almost don't realize that, like, dude, like, do you know what it's like? Like, the guys clean the inch bell 200 times. Do you know what that means? It's almost like it slips their mind, or they can't comprehend it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We just felt like when we discussed it that, like, man, like, yeah, Ben's gotten a little bit of credit for that, but we still feel like that kind of gets overlooked. And I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I kind of like that they treat it so nonchalant like that, because
yeah,
that's kind of the approach I had with it. Because once I was able to lift it, and I was like, oh, so this is what I'm dealing with here. That's why I got the mindset of, I'm going to try to clean this thing. And I just focus, it was super, super hard to do. It took a lot of effort, a lot of training, a lot of focus, a lot of study. But I want more people to think that way. I want people to think, well, shit, if he can do it, I can do it. That's great. Maybe it'll humble you, or maybe you'll prove everybody wrong and be the next lightest person to clean the inch. I'm hoping, before we're dead and gone, I hope I can see someone 172 pounds clean a 172 pound inch dumbbell. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure. And I think it's a good point you mentioned, because with these feats of strength, sometimes I like how you said, they treat it kind of nonchalant, or maybe that's a positive thing, that they're not kind of putting you or that feat on such a pedestal, because it kind of brings it down to a more regular thing. And then it kind of can become more human and duplicated. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes with these feats, I think and I say we as in, like, just people that train grip in general, we see that mountain that we got to climb, whatever that lift may be. And putting it on a pedestal is bad for you mentally, because you can almost go into it defeated, like, I'll probably never lift that, or, that's something that's kind of out of my reach. And I think that kills a lot of people that totally, if they just, like, abandon that mindset, never put it on a pedestal, just treated it like any other lift and just went head first into it, I think they would be surprised at what they would actually be able to do. So I think it's a good point you bring up. I think maybe, yeah, we give credit where credit's due for big feats and stuff like that, but also there's a benefit to not putting these things on such a pedestal that you prevent yourself from doing them. So I don't know. I just think it's a trap maybe some people fall into. And that's when you said that comment, it kind of made a light bulb go off in my head. I'm like, yeah, how many people, see the inch dumbbell and think, oh, I could never do that. And it's like, dude, you might be the next dude to clean the inch dumbbell if you can just don't think that way. So I think that you have a really good take on that. With like I said, just back to the humble thing, but also just how to push forward and up the feats. Like, if you start putting stuff on a pedestal, you're only going to, your ceiling's only going to be so high.
Yeah.
But if you kind of just open that ceiling up and, hey, I can do anything, you just chip away at it, you probably are going to go farther than the guy that's kind of like already setting limitations for himself.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to move down other topics that you kind of wanted to discuss.
Sure.
This one might get people a little amped up. Bracing lifts. Let's talk about bracing lifts and what we mean, people, by bracing a lift. I'll try to do my best to explain it. Ben can do his best to explain it if I miss something. Bracing a lift. Now, think of this, right? We are in grip sport, arm lifting, or if we're just talking pure lifting in your home gym, training grip feats. So grip feats, whatever implements, handles, you're training in your own place. When we say bracing a lift, that is you placing the implement, the handle, some part of that against your body, therefore taking some of that weight off of your grip. So if the goal for us is to test grip strength, or the feat is a grip strength feat, the second you start initiating body contact to make the lift happen, your grip is no longer doing that feat. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to discuss, like I said, bracing lifts. Ben, do you want to kind of maybe give a little intro or just your kind of take on it? Or if that explanation was a little confusing to people, maybe clear it up.
You're pretty spot on with it. I mean, that's like the video, the sarcastic video I posted about a while back with the Rolling Thunder.
Yeah.
Back when Jed was, showing the actual magazine cover of a dude bracing. I thought, oh my gosh, how do people not, notice this kind of stuff? But when you dig the handle into your leg and do a lift and claiming, this is the amount of weight that you're holding on to, that's just not it. You're not holding on to it. Your hip joint is holding on to it. I don't know, because I can't remember how much weight I put on the Rolling Thunder, but it was an amount of weight that would take years to be able to pull on, and it just nonchalantly lifted it.
You just did it that second with bracing.
Yeah. And to be honest, I made it pretty sarcastic. Like I dug it in there and all that, but it could be easily faked. Like I could go to a comp hosting Rolling Thunder, and it's real easy to brace a lift and get away with it. There are some people that don't know what they're looking for. Or there are some people that might think it's bracing, might not be. It's a little close, but they'll give you the lift. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like the integrity of the sport can be altered pretty easily.
Absolutely.
And, I just wish people would just keep it as clean as possible. And that's why when I do most of my lifts now, if my forearm is too close to my leg, I try to back it up a little bit. And if it's going to make my numbers lower, then so be it. I'm not strong enough. That's the point. So.
And that's the thing is, like, we're here to test grip strength, or we're doing grip strength things. So at any point in time when your grip isn't the main supporting part of the lift, then it's like kind of defeats the purpose. Like the example would be like picking a blob up from the floor. You can't really brace it because it's at a deficit. Yeah. Same thing with the inch bell. You can't really brace the inch bell from the floor. But I see a lot of people also in training, they're able to lift the inch bell. Mm-hmm. They'll pull the inch bell to lockout, and then they will place it against their body, wedge it up against their body and hold it, and claim that it's a timed hold. Yeah. And it's like, I would like to break this down a little bit. When you pick the inch bell up and you just rest it on your body, you're no longer holding the inch bell. It's not a timed hold. I would say that's my opinion. That's fact. Like, you're not holding it. If you were holding it, it wouldn't be on your body. Right? Mm-hmm. So I will add, though, if you are newer or your strength level is not there yet, bracing implements or objects against your body, and more so with like blobs and inch bells, that is a valid training method to get to a full lift.
Same for plate pinching.
Yes, same with plate pinching. You can use your body, but that is an assisted lift. And that's an assisted lift that you would be using to catapult you up to doing a clean lift that has full integrity, that's all grip strength. So there is a method where you can brace something against your body, and then the angle of your body or how much body you kind of push into it or how much contact you have kind of moderates how much your hand has to hold. Like, well, if I lean a little bit more this way, it goes more to my hand. I'm holding closer to what the inch bell weighs. If I lean more on my body, the bell gets a little bit lighter because my body's taking some of that. So I just had to bring that up because you see guys that are doing these holds, but if I pick a blob up and set it in my hip pocket and just lean, that's not you holding it with your hand. You know what I mean? So we just see bracing in all forms, whether it be a handle in a competition like you're explaining, where maybe the back end is kind of just touching that thigh enough to where they can squat it up and the judge doesn't see it, or it's somebody that's just training, regular old feats in their gym, but they're being like, oh, I just did a 15-second hold with the inch dumbbell. And it's like, no, you lifted the inch dumbbell and then you did an assisted method for 13 seconds. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not the same thing. So yeah, I think it's very good to kind of draw the line with that. And that's why I think discussing bracing is an interesting topic. But one thing I will add, like you said, it's kind of easy in a way, depending on the judges and who's there. This falls on the judges. If you see somebody bracing a handle or bracing something, there's more than just lockout you have to look for. If it's let's say it's an arm lifting USA event, all their lifts are pulled to lockout. If it's a Grip Sport International, it's typically, unless it's an axle or Saxon, typically it's pulled to height, meaning a crossbar will come up and hit the knock bar. That takes away some of the opinion of what lockout is. Okay, so both parties still have to have a judge that's aware that bracing can occur, whether it's a lockout lift or whether it's a pull to height lift. Both of those formats are still open to bracing and lifters bracing implements. And the method of lockout or pull to height does not take away that problem. But I think a lot of judges sit there at their competition and they go, did it hit the crossbar? Okay, good lift. They're not paying attention. Did the guy wrap his fingers underneath the handle? Did he put the handle in the wrong spot? I just want to put that out. There is more to judging than just reaching lockout, just hitting that knock bar. There are other rules set in place. Tilting an implement, having your handle, you get what I'm saying? So do you have any take on that or any advice for maybe people that are judging comps or?
To be honest, I feel like it'd be beneficial if there were two judges, one person to watch the competitor's hands and the other judge to watch the knock bar, to be honest, because that's a lot to focus on.
Absolutely.
But, for Arm Lifting USA, because they're lockout, I don't think they would need two judges, but I do feel like for GSI, two judges would be very beneficial. And it could bring up a new take on like Saxons and axles too. You could do lifting for height as well on axles and Saxons instead of a lockout. Like you could, those competition uprights we use from Arm Assassin. You could have one on each side of the bar. And when you do the lift, like let's just say we'll make it a 6-inch lift. You could do a 6-inch lift on an axle or a Saxon because you have both ends of the bar touching a knock bar.
Okay.
And like if their grip's uneven, one knock bar will touch and the other one won't. It'll be a no lift, right? I think that'd be pretty neat to include. And then that also force the need for two judges as well. So. Okay.
And that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but I remember this. Jed's old podcast, This Week in Grip. That was one of the things that they discussed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's an older episode of This Week in Grip, but they discussed because they kind of had this debate of, lockout, pull to height. And one of the things they mentioned about, well, how could we get these two-hand lifts to be a pull to height? And they had that exact same idea and they kind of discussed it. And personally, for me, I would like to see Saxon and Axel stay a lockout lift, but the idea that pull to height is a possibility or that it could be done, they discussed it. You just brought that idea up. It's definitely a smart idea. Like I said, my personal opinion, I would like to see them stay lockout lifts, even if that means there's a little more subjective opinion to what's lockout.
Well, they could have both, kind of like Little Bighorn. I mean, on the Grip Sport page, with all the rankings, top 100 and all that, the selections for Little Bighorn are lockout lift, 6-inch lift, and there's a third option too, right?
I think it's just the two, just lockout and 6-inch for a little
They
bit.
could have, the same for Saxon and Axle.
You could. I just think then it might, like, if let's say you have 50 lifts, if you open up some of that, now you have 100 lifts you're tracking, and it might like water things down too much. You know what I mean? It might just create too many things that can be tested, and then we kind of lose the core lifts of the sport. You think, or not necessarily?
I think. No, I just it depends. I guess it depends on the comp, like what implements you have in it too.
Yeah. But
Per se.
so any other things just addressing bracing or anything like that? Like I said, we're touching on it, but I just see it often where guys are claiming that they're doing a timed hold, and it's like there's a difference between doing a timed hold and you doing an assisted lift. You know what I mean? That's the biggest one I see. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't call an assisted lift a timed hold. Like, and if you're doing a feat that like you pick something up and you just totally brace one piece of it while you try to lift something else, it's like, just lift the thing, drop it, and then go pick up the other thing. Because when you lift it up, set it in your lap or do something else, you're not holding it anymore anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like you did a combo. So just,
I think a lot of it too, though, is, some of these people are pretty new as well.
yeah.
When you see someone who's been doing it for years doing that, it's a totally different story. But
True.
I've fallen victim to it. Like that video I showed you when I was learning how to do my first blob inch combo, I picked up the inch first, and I was like, well, I should have picked them up at the same time.
Yeah.
Over, trying to pick up the blob, and the inch fell in my lap. And I was like, oh, well, it's ugly, but I'll count it. But that, just.
I remember that lift. And then also, I think you had a similar moment being new where you were getting like some body contact when you were doing inch transfers.
Some?
Maybe a lot. Okay.
That was just completely accidental. For some reason, I guess my body wasn't used to that, forward load. So every time I'd throw the bell to my other hand, it pulled me forward and my legs wanted to bow in. And control it. It just kept happening. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to keep doing this until eventually my body gets used to it and I can keep my legs open.
Yeah, because you were like throwing transfers back and forth, but like the top globe was like on your body the whole time.
Yeah, it was bad. I'm sure I was pissing off a lot of people with that.
So everybody, if you were mad at the time or you happen to see those videos, Ben apologizes.
Yeah, I fixed it. Every time I do it now, I either call it a solid transfer or a legit transfer, not these cheater transfers.
Yeah. So I guess we won't beat a dead horse and go crazy on bracing lifts. But I think there are some good ideas there, and at least it's good to put it in the minds of people that are hosting and judging to kind of look out for more than just lockout or that bar touching. Yeah. There's other rules. Make sure that if you're hosting and you're competing, know all the rules of how much an implement can be tilted, how much of your hand can be here off-centered, know the pull height, you get what I'm saying? Like, I just think that so often we just see people that like, hey, grab it however you want. They're not even looking at the lifter. They're almost just looking at the knock bar. And it's like, no, you still need to be watching that guy's hand position, because I mean, there's lots of implements where you could reach your hand in a spot where it's not allowed, or you could be getting too much body contact. You know what I mean? So I think that not to just kind of trash people that are bracing lifts and training or claiming stuff that they're not doing. That's not necessarily the goal. To make sure that this discussion of bracing lifts is a positive. If anything, if there's one takeaway, I would just like judges to be aware, to be looking at the whole picture of the lift within all the rules, not just that, did his legs stand up straight? Were his shoulders back?
Yeah.
Well, none of that matters if the handle's wedged in his hip pocket. You know what I mean? So don't get so blinded by lockout, or don't get so blinded by the knock bar that you're passing guys lifts that aren't doing legit lifts. So I think that's just the biggest takeaway from the bracing talk. Like, yeah, it's fun to joke around about guys leaning bells, max timed hold. And it's like, yeah, dude, you just held the bell against your body for 10 seconds. Cool. But if we could make it a meaningful discussion that actually, other than just kind of trash talking, so to speak, that's the biggest takeaway I would like to, I guess, portray to judges and stuff, is just to make sure you know the rule set and make sure you have your eyes on there. That way the integrity of your competition and the integrity of your lifts keep the sport clean and keep everybody kind of in check. That's kind of the responsibility you take on when you host a competition. So that's my thought. Do you have a thought on that? Like a finishing thought for bracing?
I'm completely agreed.
Okay. Now, next bullet point. I'm just going to kind of go down your list here to make sure that I cover some things that you wanted to discuss. Claiming lifts without proof. Do you want to expand on that? Or what you mean exactly by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, like, if it wasn't on video, it didn't happen. That type of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I have pressed, not clean and pressed. I have pressed the Thomas inch dumbbell tons of times back in, let's see.
I remember you pressing it.
Oh, yeah.
Just not with the clean at the same time.
Yeah. And so before I knew about, scaling all your weights after you've done your lift and all that stuff, I didn't know any of that stuff. I just thought people believe it or they don't. I don't care. So when I was doing strongman, I had some Mike Bartos big top circus dumbbells. Mm-hmm. And the heaviest press I ever done was 255 pounds. Okay. But not once did I ever, at the end of the video, unscrew it, take all the weights out, show how much everything weighed, none of that stuff. Yeah. So there's no proof that my best circus dumbbell press was 255 pounds. It's just, that's what I said I did. That's it. So there's no proof. So you can't really prove that I did or not.
Yeah.
Same thing for claiming I'm also guilty of this too. Closing a Captain's of Crutch number 4. Before I knew that Captain's of Crutch was used in competitions, I thought it was just, it's a hand gripper. That's super heavy. It's hard to close. I've closed the number 4 before. Back when I was, taking SARMs, those 300 pounds, those, doing all that heavy lifting. Now I'm struggling to close 3.5s, but I'm going to get back to that. But when I do close, I'm going to close the same 4 that I had originally, but it's going to be on video. Okay. So I don't know. It's kind of haunting knowing that you've done some things that need to be recorded, and they weren't. But if it's
especially when the claims are so high that people are like,
yeah,
BS.
Yeah. And
you
now,
know what I mean?
Yeah. So now I can clean the inch, but now I can't press it. So it's kind of like a bunch of other people out there are probably like, yeah, he's full of shit. And he never pressed the inch dumbbell. He's never been that strong to press the inch dumbbell. But, there's a lot of fatigue involved with an inch clean. Not just, all the muscles working, but once you clean that bell, it smacks the hell out of your shoulder. And that takes a lot of strength out of your press, because one, after the impact, you feel it. You're really sore, and it's not, I'm sore from muscle exertion. I'm sore. I just got the shit smacked out of me. So it's from being able to just press the bell pretty easily to completely struggling just locking it out. It's a mind game, but not having those presses on video kind of changes everything,
Yeah, and also just to add in, I don't want to reveal a whole lot about it or anything or talk too much, or you can say what you want, but you've been cleaning the inch bell with your right side, and you haven't done it left-handed yet, correct?
I have not.
But at the same time, your right shoulder has been giving you issues, and you've had a right shoulder injury on and off that you've been dealing with that has also played a factor in you not pressing the bell. I don't know if a lot of people know that. I don't know if you put that out. I don't want to put too much out about it if you don't, but you've had a shoulder issue. So when we talk about maybe losing some of that pressing ability, like when your shoulder was feeling good and you were launching bigger bells for the press,
Mhm.
and then you got into, but you couldn't clean it back then. Well, once you got to where you could clean it, you had some shoulder issues and some stuff going on. So the timing was kind of off. Just something else to kind of add in, that it's not just necessarily, oh, I was stronger then and now I'm weaker in the press. You might have been a little stronger than in your pressing, but you've also had an injury that you've dealt with that has played a role in the finishing off of that press. And you have come inches from completing an inch dumbbell clean and press.
Yeah.
So,
Haunting.
it's haunting, but I think it'll happen. And just got to keep your shoulder healthy and make sure that
yeah, man.
It'll happen.
That beach vacation I had was exactly what my shoulder needed too. I haven't had any shoulder pain since I got back from my beach trip too. Because I didn't do any lifts really on my trip, and then when I got back, I'm not doing it. I haven't done any cleans. I've been focusing on mostly lateral raises and very light overhead pressing, trying to keep some strength in the shoulders. So I think doing what I'm doing now, it's going to happen because I'm not worried about not being able to clean it. I could take a couple months off, 5 months off, and still be able to clean an inch bell just because, one, I'm always training on just regular inch lifts, and two, I've kind of got the postures down to like a science personally for me now. So I'm not too concerned about not being able to clean it again. So now I'm just focusing on getting my shoulder strong again and completing the whole thing.
Okay. And that is one of your future goals, is to clean and press the inch dumbbell, because you have pressed it, you have cleaned it, but you have not cleaned and pressed it together. That would be the catch. And when you actually, real quick, sorry, I got one more question that just came to me. As the lightest person to clean an inch dumbbell, what's the lightest body weight? Because I know you have the video where like you weighed 224 or 227 when you weighed yourself and you cleaned it, and Ben's the lightest to clean it because you weighed yourself and that's the proof we talk about. But I'm sure there's other sessions where you just didn't film and you didn't, like we said, you did over 200 cleans, total. You didn't film your body weight every single time. You didn't film every single clean. You're training. You're not filming every damn thing, right? Was there ever a time you cleaned the inch dumbbell and you were lighter than that video of 224, 227? What's the lightest you think you've actually been, but maybe you didn't film it?
Between 218 and 220, I'd say.
Okay. I was just curious because, like I said, I know the video where you filmed it, so that can't be disputed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But, the scale's fake. No, I'm just kidding. But
what I really liked too, though, was doing it at nationals. Because my weight not only is just, on a recording on some Instagram post, but it's in the records. I was 227. Like I weighed in that weight. So that's really special. I like that a lot. That's cool.
Okay. True. Yeah. And there you have kind of witnesses, and you damn near pulled off the clean and press about 4 or 5 times after doing a 4 or 5 hour competition. So that's a goal I look forward to seeing you complete. And like I said, just stay healthy, and hopefully it won't take too much longer. Now I want to bring up other future lifts that you're going to try to tackle, because I'm sure people are like, okay, we know what he's done. We've seen what he's capable of. What's this guy got cooking behind the scenes? What's next? What's he going to bring? What's that next thing going to be? So do you have any future lifts you'd like to bring up? I have some that you listed here for me, but do you have any that are fresh on your mind?
Definitely transferring Blobzilla. That's, I think about that one a whole lot. I actually think about that one more than the clean and press.
Okay. And anybody that isn't familiar, whether you're listening, whether you're watching this video, when Ben is saying a Blobzilla, that is a half of a 130-pound York Legacy dumbbell that's been turned into a blob. And you lose some weight when you cut the handle. Dumbbells are not always the exact weight, but that is a very wide, large blob that very few people have lifted. And when Ben is talking about transferring that, he means throwing it from one hand to the other and catching it with the other hand. So, yeah, that's basically taking a giant chunk, that blob that's going to roughly be 62 to probably 65 pounds, picking it up, launching it over and catching it and stopping it with the other hand. Extremely difficult. So, yeah, man, a Blobzilla transfer would be pretty insane. I'm not sure that I've seen anyone do it. I don't want to be incorrect. I know like Thomas Larson has giant hands and he like face lifted it and curled it. I know
curl Blobzilla. That'd be awesome.
I know guys have curled Blobzilla. I know people have cleaned it. I don't know that I've seen a Blobzilla transfer. So I could be wrong, but from my memory, I don't know of anybody doing that one yet. So that's a cool feat.
I think it would happen before the transfer. I never thought about that because, I love curling blobs. That's like one of the things I do all the time.
You have really strong wrists. I mean, for that feat, that's something that I don't know, definitely helps. I can lift some pretty big blobs, but to curl a blob, there's something in my wrist in that open hand position that just doesn't feel good. And I need more time to build it up before I could even considering cleaning some not cleaning, curling some of those larger blobs. I could clean blobs. I can, lift them, all that stuff, and do okay. But to curl it, it's like, man, half 80, half 90 will start breaking my wrist down and stuff like that. But then I see guys like Luke Raymond's another one that comes to mind. Luke has a very strong wrist, and he actually kind of hurt himself, I think, trying to curl a red pill, which, I mean, red pill's a hard blob to curl, but Luke kind of hurt something in his hand trying to curl that. But you guys are two people that come into mind when I think of like blob curls. Tim Butler would be another one. Tim picks them up by the face and curls them, and Tim's just strong in those positions. So you guys are probably some of the best blob curlers out there. But man, there's something about that position that just doesn't really I don't know. I don't feel good there. Guess I just gotta work it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's hands are all different, man. That's why I on narrow pinch I have my west side grip going.
Yeah, do you want to explain that real quick so people know what you're talking about?
So on narrow pinch, like 2-inch pinch, I can't keep my hand like this. It throbs these knuckles. So in order to keep them from being just super uncomfortable, I overlap my fingers like this. And for some reason, having my hand like this, there's no pain in my knuckles. So that's the only way.
Yeah, they kind of like support each other, kind of takes that direct pressure off of that knuckle.
Yeah.
So that's Ben's west side grip for narrow pinch, if anybody was wondering what he meant. And if you're not viewing this on YouTube and maybe you're listening on another platform, he's basically making the west side symbol with his hand where he's crossing a middle or a ring finger over top of one another to make the west side thing. And that is how he is completing his narrow pinch lift. So he doesn't hurt his knuckle or wherever that pain is. So Blobzilla transfer, and then lifting the Blob Father is another one.
I'm getting there. Well, not recently, but there was a period of time where I was getting some good air with it, but now I haven't been able to budget.
Okay. So
I changed, but I just can't budget.
And for anybody else that, like I said, maybe people don't know, the Blob Father is a 140 legacy blob. So it's just a bigger size up from the Blobzilla. So it's just a 140 legacy or half of a 140 legacy dumbbell. And it typically is going to be a little heavier. There's some width that, that's the thing about blob lifting that I think a lot of people, well, the people that do it know, but people outside don't get, is that when you go up in a blob size, you're not only tackling extra weight, there's extra width. So everything gets like magnified. You know what I mean? So it's like at some point, hand size starts to really matter. And just because you can lift extra weight on a more narrow blob doesn't necessarily mean that you could lift a wider blob that's even lighter than that, just because of the width. So there's more factors than just the weight of a blob. So
my napalm blob I have, the half 135 York Legacy.
Yep.
It's wider than my blob father and a pound heavier.
Really?
Yeah, it's.
And I guess there's just nothing you can do. I mean, that's casting. That's how it's made. You know what I mean? You didn't make it.
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna lift blob father before I lift the napalm blob.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And another pretty awesome one on here is a 300-pound Saxon lift, and I'm assuming you mean on a 3-inch bar.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to talk about that lift at all, or?
Yeah. So I guess because when I did the Super Series and I was pulling pretty decent numbers for, first time ever pulling on a Saxon, I kind of got this. I really enjoyed lifting Saxon because I thought, oh, okay, I'm kind of good at it, so might as well stick to it, right? So, yeah, my best pull right now is 270, and I've been breaking ground consistently with 280 pounds. I had a little race with Jason Dingy and lost miserably when he locked out the 280. I was really happy for him, but yeah, got my ass kicked on that. So
okay, so you and Jason Dingy had like a behind the scenes like friendly challenge going?
Yeah, it was in the that group chat that we have with everybody.
Okay.
That's
So you guys were kind of racing to, what was it, 280 you said?
Yeah, 280, and he demolished it. So
okay.
But my grand goal is the 300-pound. That's why in Grip Sport Latino, and they had Carl on the other day.
Yes.
One of my questions was, what's your training regimen to get your 300-pound Saxon? Because I want to get there. So when he mentioned the wrist curls, 65% of what you're doing on wrist curls, I was like, dang, I never thought of anything like that. And I'm sure I have a real bad problem getting skin tears when I do 3-inch Saxon. 65% wrist curls, I don't think that would be bad on my webbing. So that
wouldn't tear you.
Yeah. So when he shared that info, I was very grateful. So
yeah, you know what's funny is I was in the middle of a lift yesterday, and this is just some insight. I'll give you guys some insight into my mind, and Ben thinks very similar. We think pretty similar in the way we overanalyze or dive into these things. I was listening to the Grip Sport Latino show or podcast where he was interviewing Carl Meyersko, and the same thing you're talking about where Carl was breaking that down. I was actually lifting in my garage while it was playing. And when Carl started to explain what he did, I had a block of chalk that still was in the wrapping because I didn't have a paper. So, like chalk, like a block of chalk comes with it's like packaged almost like gift wrap or whatever. Mm-hmm. I grabbed a Sharpie, and while Carl was talking, I was like, okay, 60 to 65%, this many sets. I just wrote down instantly what he did, like on spot, like in the middle of my workout. I was listening. Oh, that caught my attention. Yeah. I literally wrote it down on a block of chalk. So we're on the same page with kind of, you know what I mean? Just listening for that knowledge and knowing when somebody's talking. And I look forward to hopefully interviewing Carl in the future and getting the chance to talk to him as well. But yeah, that's as far as I know, Carl's the only person to lift 300 pounds on a 3-inch Saxon. So if you or Jason Dingy or some other party was able to run that number up to 300 and join him, that would be pretty insane and very rare territory.
Yeah.
So, and then another thing you wrote down here for goals in general was you said all lifts are lifetime goals. And I kind of know what you mean, but can you explain that in your own words?
So I always treat all of my grand goals as a lifetime goal. If you don't treat them that way, you're not going to take them as serious. Like if it happens, it happens. I treat them all as there's a chance I could never pull this off. So I need to stay focused, train hard, and make sure it happens. So all the goals that I want, I treat like a lifetime goal. Take them serious because I want to achieve them. They need to happen. And then if it happens, well, I just upgrade it. There's a new lifetime goal right after that. So you never know. I mean, you could have a goal that you think's achievable that may never happen. So that's why I treat them as the lifetime. Like the inch clean was a lifetime goal, because there could have been a chance where I never did it, or I got a serious injury that would prevent me from ever doing it. So that's why I treat them that way, and that's why I call them that.
Okay. No, it definitely makes sense. And like I said, grip is kind of a lifetime endeavor as well, where we see guys in their later years still gaining strength, or, you know, still maintaining their hand strength above, you know, if the body gives a little bit, but the hands seem to kind of retain some strength a little bit later in years. So having grip goals be long-term, I think is a good way to look at it. So covered a lot so far. I know obviously lifting, I don't know if you consider it a hobby or not, but it's one of your hobbies. I know you collect inch bells and you're collecting blobs. That was part of your hobbies. Do you have any blobs or inch bells that you are looking forward to getting, you're on the hunt for? Just,
you know what I'm on the hunt for. I'm on the hunt for a blue blob. Bad.
okay.
And, you know, went to plate again a couple of days ago and found they're in immaculate shape. It was crazy how blue the paint was on them. I found a pair of 10-pound York blue dumbbells, the factory paint on them. I didn't know what they were at first. I thought, you know, because I'm trying to collect some round head dumbbells. I saw they're blue, and I'm like, someone painted these. I'm going to strip them when I get home. Thankfully, I started messaging some of my buddies. They were like, do not strip that paint. That is factory. Those are the blue series you find in the sporting goods stores way back when.
Yeah.
So real excited about that. Then it got to where, this is how you know I have that collection addiction I was telling you about. I almost convinced myself that I already had a blue blob.
Yeah.
So I was looking at this. My very first Fat Man I had this weird tint. When you shine a light on it, it has this blue tint to it. I thought, that's weird. You know, someone painted it funky, blah, blah, blah. But then I started getting more information about blue blobs. I'm like, I need to talk to Jed and Zach and everybody about this. So I took so many videos to the point where I look desperate. Like, this is a blue blob. Trust me. I mean, it's not. It definitely is not a blue blob. So
okay. So you don't have a half 100 blue blob, and that is one that you're on the hunt for.
No, it got to the point where, like, I stayed up all night that night thinking, what if it is? What if it is? What if it is? And then once we had enough daylight, I took it outside to get proper lighting on it. I'm like, oh, man, it's not. So I am on the
just to throw this out there, and my information, and this would probably be coming from Jed Johnson. Jed has one.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he said that Richard Soren has one, founder, owner of Sorenex. So those would be the only two people I'm aware of that have half 100s that are of the blue style blobs. And I have not heard of anybody else that has one, but you know, they got to be out there somewhere.
And I guarantee you a bunch of people have them and don't even know, because I guarantee you there are people out there that strip that paint off because they didn't like the blue.
That could be a thing too. You never know. Or, I mean, we've seen it so many times. I mean, guys repaint blobs now and try to resell them, and it's like, why are you even painting that? Or
very large blobs that people have that stripped or repainted. So
I guess it's like any vintage weights type hunt, or any like Holy Grail. You're looking for that one thing, and you know it's out there, but man, it's extremely rare. But yeah, hopefully someday that'll line up. Or
do you know if they have different specs? Are they the same as the first?
I could be wrong, and we could always double check after this, but I believe that the blue blob is kind of an in-between of a Fat Man and a Next Gen. Like I said, I'm not saying that with 100% confidence, but I think when they did the blues, it's not quite as wide as a fat man, but it doesn't have as sharp of a side as a next gen. So it's kind of like the middle between those two,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And that's the best knowledge I have, and I'm going off memory. So if anybody listens to this that would know, like I said, Jed probably has a pretty good idea because he has a Lift the Blob book and everything. And I think maybe that's where I'm pulling this info from, because everybody calls a next gen, sometimes a second gen blob.
I do that.
But really the second gen was the blue blob, and it gets overlooked. So really there was the original Fat Man blobs that were wider, bigger slopes. There was the second gen, which was more of the blue blob, I believe. And then you would have next gen technically being the third, but often referred to the blue gets cut out. And we only think of the other two because the blues I don't think they were produced as much. Mm-hmm. But I think its shape or difficulty would land somewhere between what we consider a next gen and a Fat Man. But yeah, I've never seen one in person, and there's, like I said, better people we could ask or we could dive in. That way I'm not just making up stuff, but that's the best of my knowledge and going off my memory. Aside from blob collecting, bell collecting, sketching, and you wrote down that you like to sketch grip designs and grip implements.
Yeah.
Can you explain some of that? I've seen some of your drawings you did with like Frankenstein cleaning the inch bell. And I think there was another one I'm leaving out, but.
I've always liked sketching and drawing. That was kind of like the thing I did when I was a kid. Ended up really diving deep into drawing and painting and all that art stuff when I was in college. I even did tattooing for a while.
I was going to say, if anybody hasn't really seen, like you got a long sleeve shirt on right now, but you're essentially, I mean, your whole body is pretty much tattooed.
Yeah.
A good portion.
3/4 sleeve on this one. I plan on extending it, but once this sleeve's finished, I'll have a full long sleeve shirt. I have a lot of tattoos. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the drawing's always been a thing. And usually when I have something I really enjoy, like doing, like when I was big into hiking, I'd love to draw mountains and landscapes and stuff. Now I'm really big into grip, and I think it'd be pretty cool to draw t-shirt designs or poster designs, anything like that. Something when I got some free time, something I can draw up and just enjoy to do. And that's when I did the crusher rolling out of a hand. It's all stuff. Frankenstein inch clean, and then the octopus arm or the Kraken coming around Saxon bar, release the Saxon. I thought that was pretty neat.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I think that's a cool idea. And I think the fact that the artwork is coming from somebody that lifts those things and kind of lives that lifestyle also just kind of adds authenticity to it. That you know what I mean? It's one thing if like some random artist is out there and they're painting something they know nothing about. They just have good painting skills or good art skills, but they don't live it. When that person that like really lives that, the lifting, the training and all that stuff, and it's really a big part of kind of who they are, what they enjoy doing, and they can kind of translate that into art. I think that adds I don't know, it just adds a different factor to it to me. It holds more meaning.
Joe Hodson is the one that got me into that. I saw all of his awesome drawings. I'm still waiting on my t-shirt, Joe, of that grippy skinny. So
yeah,
he draws a lot of really good stuff, really cool stuff. I like to even put posters of his stuff on my gym walls. He's got a good talent, and he inspired me to get into it. So
maybe we can get like you and Joe to team up as like a grip poster company or something and start designing some posters and banners for people. I don't know. Like, I don't want to force you guys to do something or put pressure on, but yeah, you both have very good artistic ability, and seeing that kind of put into the things we're training and lifting, make it real relatable and pretty cool, in my opinion. So kind of moving on, we've been going at it for a decent amount of time. Do you have any kind of topic that you think maybe we skimmed over, maybe something you just thought of while we were talking? Anything that comes to mind?
No, Right off the top of my head, I don't think so,
Okay.
man.
So you feel like covered most everything that you wanted to discuss and all that?
How long's the podcast been going right now? I don't have
About
like,
an hour and a half, roughly. So
Okay.
we're on pace with about what I did with Joe, and I feel good. I feel pretty good about the subjects. And like I said, every interview is going to be a little different. It might be 1, might be 2 hours, but I'm not too concerned when I get someone like this that's done the things you've done and achieved what you've achieved so far, and the stuff we have to look forward in the future from you. I don't want to cut you down to 20 minutes, and I feel like it's a disservice to the people. You know what I mean? Like if I get you or if I get Carl talking, I don't want to give you guys some generic questions for 15 minutes and then cut you off. And then, it's like, man, yeah, I really want you to have the floor, discuss what you want to discuss, be open. And, that way, when the people actually hear, it might be a little bit long. Okay. Listen to it in different segments, 30 minutes today, 30 minutes tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, okay. Or if you're on a really long car drive, people can listen to it then. So I don't stress about these things going too long. I want to really keep them under 2 hours, but I don't want to try to limit anybody's ability to talk about subjects if we're rolling and have important things to say and the people want to hear from you.
yeah.
I'm not going to be censoring you or cutting you down or, hey man, I got it free to run and say what you want. So, with covering everything we've covered and feeling like most of that's been good to go. I did do like a questions for me type section.
Yes.
Do you remember any of your questions for me, or do you want me to kind of go off of the outline and?
Let's do that. I cannot remember anything.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
horrible.
So Ben wrote down on the outline, why do I train grip? And why do I want the sport to grow? So I touched on this in a previous episode a little bit with Joe, but I think there's such a deep connection to grip strength or just humans using their hands in general, where I talked about like, that's how we basically are like building things, constructing things. You talk about art. That's literally how you're creating your art. You know what I mean? And that's not, maybe art's not a strength related thing, but what I'm saying is like, our hands are almost the most useful tools we have. Brain, you got to have the brain, but you get what I'm saying. But our hands are kind of what takes that message from the brain and creates. So our hands are the thing that creates. That's what we build stuff with. That's what we lift stuff with. You know what I mean? That's a big part of us. It's just our hands. So when you get so many different ways to train that, I just think there's such a deep connection to hand strength that has to do with our species of being humans in general. Like, why are you in a house right now? Because somebody built it with their hands. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. I think that is there's just a connection to grip strength, having that usefulness back in the day. Now we're a little more modern. People get to kind of like hang out on computers. Like I'm talking to you on a computer now, you know what I mean? So like we have to like almost come up with things to challenge our grip strength. Like we got to go in our garage and like lift these bells, but like other people were like, I don't know, carrying railroad ties and shit like that. You know what I mean? They didn't have a choice.
Brick masons, stuff like that.
Yeah. Brick masons, jobs like that, blacksmiths, so in an era where a lot of your life and providing for your family and everything kind of relied on, I guess, just being a strong man or having good hand strength or, being able to work with your hands was just a thing. So I think it's something that kind of demands respect. And that's part of the reason I train it. And it's part of the reason I'm, I guess, obsessed with training grip is that kind of tie to old school lineage and just being human. And like I said, there's just so many different ways to test it. And our hands are about the most useful thing we have, aside from the brain kind of being the driving machine behind that. Why do I want the sport to grow? I want the sport to grow because it's very similar to like, and this is not me trying to be funny or joke about anything. But it's kind of like if you have a grappling tournament and you'll see people that go to grappling tournaments. Sometimes this is a thing. It has happened to people. It's never happened to me, but this is something that has happened to people where they sign up, they pay their registration fee, they go to the grappling tournament, and they are the only person in their weight class, and there's no one to grapple. So by default, they basically get first place. And it's like, there's nobody else on the podium. So how much does that win mean? So with grip being a smaller kind of underground sport in general, well, just to break it down, why do I want the sport to grow? Well, I just competed back in March at the Arnold for Arm Lifting USA. And don't get me wrong, I cut down to the 90 kilo class, so 198 pounds, and every lifter in the class was strong as hell and tough. But there was only 4 of us. You know what I'm saying? So don't get me wrong, quality is like through the roof. We're all invited. We all qualify. We're strong.
Yeah.
But there's still such a small number of us. How much more would that 3rd place medal mean if I wasn't in a group of 4?
Well,
you know, you
experience that at Heavy Hands.
What's that?
Your weight class for Heavy Hands, man.
If I cut. But yeah, the 93 kilo class for the Heavy Hands comp that me and Ben are hosting is seems to be pretty stacked. There's about 7 or 8 guys in that class. And that goes to my point where that's why I'd like the sport to grow, because I would like for people to show up, and you get it with remote competitions. But like I said, we're not lifting in the same area. Like King Kong is amazing because the turnout, but people are lifting different handles. It's multi-venue, different judges. What I would like to see the sport grow into is when we have a local or regional competition or even a nationals, we get, 7 or 8, maybe even 10 people per weight class. That way it just adds more credibility, or it'll just drive the sport in a better direction, because there'll be more competition, more strong people, more, just more bodies. And I think Joe spoke about that when I talked to him. I asked him if, if he wanted to run an Australian nationals, what would it take? Do you just need more quality lifters? And Joe basically said, I don't really care about quality. I would prefer to have quantity. Mm-hmm. Because even if it's 5 beginners, if they're all close and they're all pushing themselves, that's fun. That's that competitive environment. That's going to build the sport. That's, I'd rather have 10 beginners all going neck and neck than have like 2 veterans that just pretty much know where they're already at and they're going to lift, and they both get 1st and 2nd place because they're the only 2 that show up. So yeah. That's why I would like to see the sport grow, man. I would just like to see a little bit more depth in the weight classes, because don't get me wrong, when you get to the top of any of these weight classes, nobody's weak. Nobody's a slouch. Everybody's a monster, and there's no disputing that. I would just like to see bigger turnouts. That way, you don't have to turn back around and be like, oh, well, I got 2nd place. How many people were there? 3. You know what I mean? It just, like I said, and then you can try to no, but you don't get it. Like, the guy that was in 3rd place is this strong. It's like, no one cares. Like, there's 3 people, you got 2nd. It just doesn't seem like it's as legit or as big of a thing. But if you say that, like, hey man, I took 2nd place out of 25 people, it's like, holy shit. Like, you must be pretty good. Even if 23 of the lifters were garbage. I'm just saying, I think that bigger turnouts is better for the sport in general. And I think it would drive and promote more competition. I think that it would also promote newer guys getting into the sport. And I think that's everybody's goal in general. It's part of the reason we want to host. I mean, we want to host competition because we're like, we feel passionate about this stuff. We want to do it, but man.
Yeah. I've got 3 or 4 people. They're not signing up online. They're going to show up with money. But I got 3 or 4 people that I grew up with. They're really good, supportive friends.
Okay.
They're competing. So I'm, this Heavy Hands might be their introduction to grip. And I think that's phenomenal. If both of us can get more people into grip through hosting events, then more hosting events, we need to be doing that, because that's great.
And I think that's what's good for other people that are looking to host is like, yeah, you might be, we've all had our own gateway. Like you said, it was a meeting somebody that got you to, you met Dylan to get you to go to an arm lifting competition. That was your gateway. Well, heavy hands could be the gateway for the next Ben Helms or whoever to pop up and down the line. So I think that as a promoter, the more that we get people promoting and running good, solid events, that's where we're going to get growth. If people don't know about it or it's not available, then how do you expect them to compete? So we have to kind of take accountability for that. So we'll be kind of hosting that now. We're just moving on to the questions. Why do you like coaching, MMA, and grip? And that's Ben asking me this question. I don't want to like regurgitate something I've already said before, but basically because you're never done with either one. Yeah. You never master the art of fighting to where you can just stop and say, you know it all. You can never just say, I've lifted every single thing in grip that could ever be lifted. I'm done. There's like you said, you might have that lifetime goal. Once you meet it, well, okay, I guess I got to up the lifetime goal. It's that same concept. It's the same thing you said, all lifts are lifelong lifts. Mm-hmm. That's why I like coaching in those disciplines, and it's just lifelong. So as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm able to do it and enjoying it, that's the plan. So that would kind of, to keep that one brief. And then what unthinkable grip feats would you like to see someone achieve in your lifetime? We can both answer this one. I'll ask you first. What unthinkable grip feat would you like to see, or do you think will happen in your/our lifetime?
So I think it's going to happen pretty soon. The interview with Carl the other day, he didn't want to talk about what possible feats he'd be doing with dumbbells, but I think he's either going to try to.
I might know one of them, but I don't want to speak on it. But keep going.
I think he's either going to try to transfer the Millennium Bell, or he's going to try to clean the Millennium Bell.
Okay.
That's what I think he's going to try to do. That is what I've always been wanting to see now. So since I started grip, I'm like, oh man, no one's cleaned a Millennium Dumbbell. I want to see that happen.
That would be pretty.
Goals that we've talked about. I want to be able to continental clean a Millennium Dumbbell, which I think could be doable one day.
Yeah, kind of just ride it up your body.
Yeah, at my body weight, I'd probably never be able to clean a Millennium Dumbbell.
Yeah,
I have to be much heavier.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For me, what do I think? Man, because we're saying like unthinkable grip feats. Some of these aren't unthinkable because like there's been rumors of them happening, but they haven't been caught on film. One that has been rumored to have happened that I've never seen actual proof, and someone could listen to this and say, oh, bullshit, I saw so-and-so do it at XYZ back in 2020 or 2010. Okay, I'm just saying, back to our same thing earlier, proof. You know what I mean? Documentation that it happened, more than just some guy saying it, because we can't open the floodgates for that to happen. But one of the rumored feats that I've heard of, but I've never seen footage of, that I think is doable and that I think might happen is someone snatching the inch dumbbell. So inch dumbbell, snatch.
Yeah.
And I think that is one that it's rumored that like maybe Mark Henry snatched the inch dumbbell. Okay, but all we saw was a clean and press video. So that's what I'm going by. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I've been seeing like Carl. I've seen Carl doing high pulls, like up to his face with the Thomas Inch dumbbell. Yeah. And I think it drops down just a little bit. He's snatching that thing. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see, man. If I get well, I'll say if, I say when, because I have emailed a little bit with Carl. I'm hoping to get him on at some point. I'm not sure when that'll be. I know he just did Grip Sport Latino, so I don't want to like interview him just after he did that. I want to kind of give a gap, and the way I interview and do stuff's a little different. So I'm going to give him some time, but maybe when I get Carl on here someday, I'll kind of dive into maybe if he's got some of those unthinkable things, or maybe he's pulled a couple off by the time I interview him and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think somebody may be snatching the inch dumbbell because I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I think that would be something that would pretty much be pretty unthinkable. Cause I mean, you see the guys that are struggling to clean it, you know what I mean? It's like to snatch it and just that shoulder stability and under and balance. Like, man, I think that snatching the inch dumbbell would be pretty, honestly, just insane.
I think, to be honest too, it takes away form, in my opinion, because it's a dumbbell snatch with a soda can size handle. I feel like form and technique. I think being strong would matter most for that lift, because because you see these guys cleaning dumbbells or the Thomas inch dumbbell level, and they just throw it up to their shoulder like that.
Yeah.
They have people smaller like me who find a technique for it. You can't do that with a snatch. It's got to be, you can't tilt lift into a snatch or anything like that.
There's a lot of horsepower behind that.
Whole lot of horsepower. So I think a snatch is only attainable to the big boys, like world strongest men type stuff,
Yeah.
Because they can just muscle that thing up there.
For sure. And then, like I said, these are questions you had for me, but I just want to ask both of us, where do you see grip sport or arm lifting in the next 20 years? And that's we're talking 2043. You're 28, you would be 48 years old. I don't know. Where do you see the sport when you're 48? Think about it like that, right?
To be honest, I think and I hate saying it, but I think 20 years from now, it'll probably be a different organization. I could see that. I mean, yeah. Things change. I mean, I've trained in like MMA gyms and stuff where like when I was younger, you're training and you just think that like, man, this is life forever. Like this gym's always going to be here. And then it's like, boom, this coach moved to California. He's now working here. He's doing that. The gym basically implodes and you're like, I thought this was going to be forever. You know what I mean? So the gyms can come and go. So the same thing with an organization, or the same thing with, when you start talking a 20-year gap, a lot can change. And maybe even if current organizations don't I don't want to say like fall under or change, or new ones might pop up. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, who's to say a new one doesn't pop up, or who's to say that maybe the current organizations change their format? 20 years is a long time and a lot can happen. So, and I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think the norm will change too. Athletes, regardless of sport, are always getting stronger somehow. There's always something new. Like before CrossFit, the unthinkable was a sub 5-minute mile and a 500-pound squat. Like if you can do that combo, you're a scary human being. And now you have pretty much your average CrossFitter, professional CrossFitter, can do a sub 5-minute mile and a 500-pound squat. So that's what was unthinkable is now the norm. And I'm thinking, 20 years from now, we're definitely going to be seeing people in the 93 kg class doing a 500-pound axle or something crazy like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Oh, yeah, because all sports eventually take off. They just have to have their era, their time. Like grip's still kind of, not big like all the other, sports you think of, like MMA or even Olympic weightlifting and all that stuff. But
you just think like NFL, MLB, NBA. Just common sports that schools have. Like, you know what I mean? Kids grow up doing these sports. They look up to those athletes. They continue to go to college to play those sports. Nobody's like in 6th grade saying like, you know what? I really want to pinch plates together. Like, you know what I mean? Well,
I know for a fact when I get older, like when my son is in, I guess, around middle school, I'd want to get in touch with Parks and Recreation and start up a grip league. I think that'd be amazing to have grip as a Parks and Rec sport. I think that'd be awesome. Low injury risk, healthier hands is a healthier lifestyle. I mean, I just like the idea. I think that'd be cool. So I think grip will take off down the road, the more exposure it gets. So
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it's almost impossible. It would be hard for me to predict where it would be 2 years from now.
yeah,
So when you say 20 years, man, I would be in my 50s. Oh God. But yeah, I don't even know. But I would think that, yeah, the athletes will evolve because, like I said, when I first started, even just in this short 2 years I've been competing, when I went back in the database or looked at these leaderboards, just how much they've changed in the 2 years I've been involved in the sport has been pretty insane. Like there are certain like world records that now aren't even in the top 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you start getting stronger guys coming around. You start getting guys that figure out the technique. It starts getting exposed to bigger, higher level athletes that are already coming in with a bigger strength base. That isn't just a guy that's lifting for fun in his garage. And maybe it's like a, former strongman or somebody, like world's strongest men. You get like some of these world's strongest men competitors. You get these like professional strongmen coming over. You maybe get some like ex-NFL athlete. You get what I'm saying? Like once you start getting the like human specimens to maybe venture over a little bit, man, it might just take world records and just bump them out of top 10, top 20 lifts. I mean, we've already seen it in the last couple of years. Like I mean, it depends on how much it's contested, but like a quick example was the two-hand flask. The two-hand flask in competition, now not what people did at their house, but like in competition, I think Cody Burns had the record for the two-hand flask, and it was like 220 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And then when Jed hosted, and like I said, there was guys that had lifted more than that for maybe a leaderboard page or for, the flask leader page, whatever. But I'm saying like in a GSI comp, that technically was, I believe, the top lift. And then since then it's been contested numerous times, and Jed held it at like Worldwide Grip Battle. Skillet Hands held it, and I think currently Nick Sanders holds the record at like 270 something. But you had a lift that was at 220, and then it got contested like 2 to 3 times in the last year. And that top lift is just like decimated. You know what I mean? So you start talking 20 years. I don't think there will be that big of a change because, there's always going to be kind of a ceiling where, it's not going to, like there's certain things that guys are doing now that are going to stand the test of time. Like Tanner Merkel or Tim Butler lifting close to 260 pounds on a little bighorn. I'm sorry, but that is going to stand the test of time for a minute. That's not just going to get bumped out of the top 10 in a couple years. You know what I mean? So certain lifts like that are going to be around.
I can see Andrew's axle being that way. Like whatever top lifts are recorded on the website, I think those are going to get smashed with more exposure to that bar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my question is, I wonder, because I think Andrew Derniat lifted 396 pounds on it.
97, I think.
Okay. Well, just under 400.
Yeah.
I believe. Well, we can look it up, but whatever. But yeah, I'm interested to see if anybody can, when we host that at Heavy Hands, I'm interested to see if anybody can crack that 400 mark. And if they don't crack that 400 mark, then like you said, if that becomes a more contested implement, how long till someone does reach that? But having someone like Andrew Derniat kind of lay the foundation and show that a 390 plus lift is possible or 400 pounds is obtainable, it paves that way for the next guy to come through and try to do it. But right now, essentially, it hasn't been contested. And if it was contested, I don't think anybody would have lifted that. So we'll maybe see the next few years how that goes. But
definitely.
But yeah, man, that's pretty much it for most of the questions. So if you don't have any other extras, bonus stuff off of that, we can kind of wrap things up.
Right.
If I know you're not active on YouTube, but you are active on Instagram. So if you wanted just to, I guess, just put out there, maybe your Instagram or where people can find your lifts, or maybe get in contact with you about lifts if they were interested in grip. Because like I said, as somebody that's, I mean, just like we talked about, past veterans, for us kind of paving the way in the sport, you're paving the way now for the next generation, doing these inch cleans and stuff and hosting competitions. So how do people get in touch with you and see what you're up to, what you're lifting and things like that? Is it mostly Instagram or?
Mostly. I'm planning on getting into YouTube, just because, the podcast going on, and I've been watching, Jed's podcast on there. That's really most of the time I'm on YouTube recently has just been Jed's podcast. So the more podcasts are coming around, I'm going to be on YouTube a lot longer, a lot more. I'm probably going to post videos on there too. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I'll probably be on there, but for Instagram, I can't even remember my username because I never look at it.
You want me to help you out?
Den Bugless or something like that.
It's Den Bugless. It's like the reverse of the whatever.
Yeah. My first name and my middle name. So it's Ben Douglas, but I flopped the first letters in each. So it's Den Bugless.
Den Bugless.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys want to check out some of Ben's insane training, some of his big grip feats and stuff like that, or reach out to him about competing in a future competition, maybe competition advice. Ben's pretty much been an open book, super cool to me. And we discuss training stuff all the time. So if you want, reach out to him on Instagram at Den Bugless. And yeah, like I said, check out his lifts, and like to thank everybody for listening. Thank everybody for watching, and see you next time. So thanks for being on the show, Ben.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man.
See ya.